Why is it that certain biracial people are considered black while others are not? To give you a really good example, Mariah Carey. If I think back to Mariah Carey, someone I grew up listening to and loving, like I loved Mariah Carey, listened to all of her music, my whole family did, and she's a legend. So the black community back then used to embrace Mariah Carey. She was on BET, people would celebrate her. And I think like when you see people like her with notoriety and are successful, all of a sudden we want to accept her as black and have her a part of that community because it's a win for us. But ultimately she's black and she's white. So why are we accepting some biracial people and allowing them to express and own their blackness, but other people who are biracial are not allowed to do that? I see it amongst the biracial community as a whole, like not just my own page, but I see an overwhelming theme. It's not just skin tone, because you look at Mariah Carey, you look at Barack Obama, Halle Berry, even Bob Marley, people who have different skin tones, and they're all treated differently according to their fame, their success, their notoriety, who they are. I mean, Barack Obama wasn't our first mixed president. He was our first black president. And this is where sometimes I think our society is a little bit twisted, because no wonder why biracial people have questions about their identity, because everyone's out here stating their opinions and accepting some people and not accepting others. Like, don't you see where the confusion lies? And this is the biracial dilemma. And it's not the biggest problem in the world, but it's something that people who are not biracial and are constantly being told what they are find really annoying and really frustrating. And so a lot of people ask, well, why don't you just celebrate being both? Or why don't you just love being mixed? And I think there's a lot of pressure from society to choose one or the other. So it's not that I don't want to identify with both. I think it makes it difficult when people kind of place or put me in this category of what I'm supposed to be. Okay, America. Okay, world. Who am I today?
Interesting fact, a genetic study was done, and the average black American has up to 24% European ancestry due to slavery and the generational rape of black women. And I think this is evident in people like me. I am what you would consider fully black. I come from two black parents, and this is what I look like. I don't think I look fully biracial, but we know there are a lot of biracial people that could look like me. So hypothetically, if I were to have kids with a white man and did a 23andMe test on our kids, there's a strong likelihood that they would have more European ancestry show up than African ancestry, just based on the fact that I'm black American. But look, we all know genetics can do a number. And if y'all know Thandie Newton's daughter, that 25% is showing out. And race is a social construct. So she damn well is considered black. I'm going to do a part 2 on this.
Don't go watch that video. This conversation's so damn tired. People, it doesn't matter if what you consider biracial people to be, okay? It's a cultural thing, it's a skin tone thing, it's a phenotype thing. We all know that. I'm biracial. I got some European features in me, but my mom is black and I was raised by the black side of my family, and I had no influence from the white side of my family. So it's cultural. I am biracial, but I consider myself a black biracial person. So on and so forth. Examples. You know what I mean? When I walk into an all-black space, black people say, oh, there go that light-skinned boy, or he mixed, whatever. And I'm like totally fine with that because I don't have to prove my blackness. Just shut the fuck up.
I made a video on this 2 years ago, but I got no problem giving a short summary. The reasons like that because of, obvious reasons. Some are like us, and some are like both. Blake Griffin is like both. But also got to do with your style, your personality, okay? That has a lot to do with it too, as well as what I just mentioned. For example, Alicia Keys is mixed, but people mostly associated her with black culture because she makes mostly music that is popular black genres. And she has a, style that's, back. With the braids, how she dresses, and how she talks. And some have a style that's both. Like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, he has a style that's, Polynesian, and also his style is black. So those are the two reasons why. Your features and your style. Those are the two things we base it on.
I don't know. It's just strange for me that this question is still popping up in various forms, because the very simple answer is whiteness is constructed off of exclusion of anything else. And blackness is the relegated outlier. A convenient example of this is the fact that there was a word for a person who otherwise had white ancestry or European ancestry, and one black grandparent, but there is no comparable word for someone who, like me, who is a quarter genetically European, so I have the equivalent of one white grandparent. There's no word for that. I'm not a quadroon reverse. I figure that's a significant amount of African Americans in general. To answer your question, why we don't call Barack Obama our first mixed president, because he wasn't. That's one reason. I think another, possibly even more significant reason, is how people who are racially ambiguous or biracial and mixed race choose to embrace their cultures. Your first example was Mariah Carey, and say that the black community wanted to embrace her because of her success. I don't know if you remember when Mariah Carey hit the scene, but she was coming out in black spaces. She was she came up in the church, that voice. There was nothing ambiguous culturally about Mariah Carey. It's just, she was light skinned. So with Mariah Carey and with Barack Obama, it's not really, are we allowing them to embrace and express their blackness? It's that's what they did. No one, they didn't really ask. They express their blackness, one, by being black, and two, by shying away from or their blackness, or trying to assimilate for fully and discreetly into whiteness. Barack, first biracial president, but he married a black woman. His daughters are undeniably black. He does not deny his blackness, and I think that's what makes him, that's why we see him as a black president. Let's contrast Dwight Eisenhower or J. Edgar Hoover, who had mixed ancestry, but we don't see them that way. There's a reason.
As exhausted I am with this goddamn conversation, I'm going to give you a very simple answer as a black woman. Sometimes biracial people look black, and we can't tell whether or not they're biracial. Sometimes y'all asses don't look black. It ain't got nothing to do with us. It don't have nothing to do with y'all. It's nobody's fault. But sometimes genes mix up. You can never really predict how a biracial person is going to look. At the end of the day, the way you look, the way you're perceived, changes the way you interact with people. If you don't look black, nobody ever thinks you're black. Guess what? You don't have a full black experience. So it's hard for us to really accept the fact that you are black because of the way we experience life, and we have an authentic, real black experience. And let's keep it a buck. Some of y'all don't claim blackness until it's convenient. That's a fact. And y'all always want to have this conversation with black people, but never white people.
So the thing is, biracial people have multiple options. Option number one is to align yourself and be in close proximity to your whiteness. Another option is to align yourself and be in close proximity to your blackness. And the third option is to align yourself with both of your racial backgrounds, right? Now, what normally happens, well, I can't say normally, but what normally happens in a situation where you see monoracial black people not claiming a biracial person is because that person has chosen to distance themselves from their blackness, align themselves with their whiteness, with the side that will be able to grant them more privileges, right? Will have more doors open, more access granted for them during their lifetime. So, yeah, no, we're not going to claim you. If that's what you're choosing to do, that's cool. But also to keep that same energy, right? Because it's cool to be black now, right? Everybody wants to take part in black culture. Everybody wants to take part in black cultural nuances, right? So don't try to other yourself. But then when it's convenient for you and when it's cool, when it's the hip thing to do, you want to align yourself in with your blackness and let everybody know, but oh no, I'm a quarter black, or I'm 50% black, and here's a picture of my parents so I can say the N-word. That's when we have an issue. That's where the problems come in, because it's if you're not with us shooting in the gym, then why you want to take parts and the few cool things there are about being black. Not to say that there's not a lot of great things about being black, but you know, if you're not gonna be out there with us in the field, then no, like, stay over there, stay white, right, and leave us the fuck alone. It's very simple math.
I think the bigger issue here is that people, especially within America, and especially African Americans / Black Americans, conflate race and ethnicity far too much. So then when we get to having these conversations, we can't have honest conversations about who would go out in public and be perceived as racially black. Instead, what we are talking about is whether or not people have a right to their ethnicity. Because regardless of whether or not you come out presenting as black, you are still ethnically whatever you are. So, like, no offense to the person I just stitched, but she wouldn't, in my opinion, she would never go anywhere and people see her as a black woman, as just straight up black. That would not be the case. However, ethnically, she is still Black American or African American. That's still her ethnicity, but her race is not, in my opinion, black. And I feel like that's the conversation we need to be having. Like, nobody is saying that you don't have black in you. No one is saying that your ethnicity is not black or African American. We're saying that racially, you don't present as the rest of us. And you have to acknowledge that. You can still be your ethnicity, but you just don't present like the rest of us. So you don't really have the same experience as the rest of us. And that's all really this conversation is a race versus ethnicity. And a lot of us Black Americans, African Americans, or people who just only want to identify as black conflate race and ethnicity because for whatever reason. But that's why this conversation is going the way it's going and not going anywhere, really. That's just my 2 cents as someone who grew up around a lot of biracial people and who also grew up loving Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey has always made it very clear that she is not black herself, but she does embrace her black ethnicity, right? And she's made that very clear. She's made very clear also that she identifies as a mixed race woman, and she made that clear, which is why the black community embraces her. She does not call herself black. She's never said she's a black woman, but she has said that she's a mixed race woman who embraces her blackness. That is the difference.
The same people that believe in trickle-down economics, I think believe in trickle-down privilege. That the biracial and light-skin privilege is just gonna wash down over all of us. You have to be considered a palatable black person in order to be successful, usually, in this country. The closer you are to Eurocentric standards of beauty, be that complexion, features, whatever, the more palatable you are considered. So a lot of our first, like the president, Tiger Woods, Halle Berry, a lot of them are biracial. But if we allow them to categorize themselves as biracial and not black, then that would kind of take away from the accomplishment. I hate to say it that way. I think about the way the black community attaches themselves to Zendaya. And they're like, oh my gosh, like I love Zendaya. Let's be super duper clear. But she's biracial. And the minute she starts claiming the fact that she's biracial, but even she has gone on to say, I am Hollywood's acceptable version of a black woman. Personally, being in entertainment, I like when biracial people go by and announce themselves as being biracial because it's the truth. I don't know why black people get so upset when they do this, because how you gonna argue science? Like, we really let the LGBTQ community have every letter of the alphabet, but the minute somebody pulls up a Punnett square and says, yes, I'm both of these things and I'm proud of it, we like spontaneously combust it, like break down. But back to the reason why I like it. It's mainly because it's not going to condone the erasure of monoracial black women. I think there's been a lot of discourse about what Hollywood deems as black, and we've noticed that it's a bit whitewashed, but we contribute to that issue because we don't let biracial people announce that they're biracial. We want to shove them in the category with us and make them choose. And then what ends up happening is when they are given the platform to represent all of us, and we good and goddamn well that that's not how all of us look, we get mad. It's very weird. I'm just as confused as she is on the subject, if you ask me personally, but I don't get mad when biracial people claim both sides and are happy with their upbringing. Like, I I let people identify however they choose to identify. It's not a big thing.
So let's make it a little bit more interesting and add some Afro-Latina in there. So something that I am on a journey with is ancestral work, ancestral veneration, tracing ancestry, learning my roots. So my dad, I'm 37, so grew up as a child with the term African American. Now I say black, we all say black, but when I grew up, there was never like, you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black. There's none of that. I also know and understand now that culture is passed through the mother, especially if you have a mother in the household. I have a 2-parent household, and my mom was raised by white women. So she does not identify as black. She does not identify as Afro-Latina. Doesn't say she's mixed. She just simply says, because she was raised with that, like, I don't see color bullshit. So in the 50s. So she says my dad's Cuban, my mom's Scotch Irish. So dad, born and raised in Cuba, Afro-Cuban. I specify that because there are Cubans that look like this. Afro-Cuban, Haitian. So my great grandmother is Haitian. She grew up knowing her Haitian grandma. Her mom, white from the Midwest, like pilgrim white. I literally use that phrase correctly. They came here in the 1600s. English, Irish, Scottish roots, okay? So she is a halfie. She's half and half. And doesn't care to break down that, doesn't identify as that. Her name is Danis, and that's what she says. She says, I'm Danis, period. That's it. I'm Danis. Good for her. Also funny, when she was a kid, everybody used to think she was Hawaiian because I guess Hawaii was becoming a state. And she hated her family. So she, as a child, identified as Hawaiian. Funny as hell. Dad's family, I don't need to do a 23andMe. They're black African American from Chicago. So for me, I am mixed. On my spiritual journey, especially if you're going to go down the road of African traditional religions, hoodoo, whatnot, it is confusing and hard for me to try to pick a lane because I do not want to ignore or disrespect or not pay homage to any line of my ancestry. I definitely felt initially roped in by my white Celtic-y ancestors, but now, and especially since 2020, feel called in the other direction. Part 2.
So that actually is not a very good example to prove the point. The point that that post was trying to make is that certain biracial people are accepted as black once they've reached a certain level of success. And the poster was made mention of Mariah Carey, which I have her memoir right here. I've read it a couple times. Great read. I disagree with that because Mariah Carey specifically has always, for over 30 years at this point, since she came on the scene as a 20 or 21-year-old songstress, has always stood 10 toes down on the fact that she is not white. Has always stood 10 toes down on the fact that she is a biracial black woman, biracial black person, a person who has a black father and a white mother. And her lived experiences, the experiences that she details in this book and the experiences that she details growing up in interviews and stuff like that, those are not the experiences of a white person, okay? A white person isn't like, doesn't invite a friend over from school and have that friend run away crying in horror because she saw that her father was black. Like, that doesn't happen to white people. That happens to a biracial black person. So Mariah Carey is accepted as part of the black community because she has a black father, has never hidden or faltered from being vocal about her love for, you know, her black lineage, ancestry, parentage, or whatever. And it is the community that she is choosing to be a part of. She's making the intentional choice to be a part of that community. And the thing that I think we miss when we talk about people, biracial people who look like Mariah Carey or who look like Meghan Markle, is when we talk about passing, which is not an identity, it is a verb, it is an action that you do, it's something that you choose to do, it is an intentional decision that you make to forego being a part of the Black community and completely ignore your Black lineage and parentage, is that there were plenty of biracial people who had light skin, blonde hair, light eyes, who could have, if they wanted to, passed and lived their life as white people, but decided not to. Decided to be a part of the Black community and remain a part of the Black community. So
that if you are mixed race, if you are half Black, half white, and you look more white, it is very obvious that you cannot relate to the plight of the Black American experience. And so when people are talking about Black people, they're not talking about you, because you have no idea what that feels like to be considered a Black person in society standards. Like, yes, you may technically be Black because you have a Black parent, but if you've never lived your life as a Black American, if people do not look at you and immediately think Black person, then it's not going to be the same thing. You're not going to be related to the same way. People are not going to trust you. Black people are not going to trust you the way that they would trust other Black people who look like them. And that's really just the crux of it. Like, I'm sorry, but a great example of this would be Halsey. If Halsey called me a nigger, I'd have to whoop her fucking ass. I would have to whoop her ass, and I think she would understand that too, because she knows that she does not walk through life and experience life as a Black woman. It just doesn't happen. And the same thing can be said for the person whose video I'm stitching. Like, no hate, no shade. You are very pretty. And I think you're telling everyone that you're Black. I don't know. I didn't finish watching your video. I just saw your question. I was like, this is a great question to answer. But you very likely do not experience the ins and outs of what it means to be a Black American every day, because you have Eurocentric features that distinguish you from other Black people. Whereas other Black people have very obvious Black features, like a wider nose or darker skin, or more coarse hair. And those are things that you cannot claim. You cannot relate to those things. And so people who look like you, or people who may look even more white passing, are not going to be considered as Black as other people, because they just don't live their lives as Black people the way that other Black people do. So I think that's the pretty obvious answer, girl.
I said this in the comments, but I want to reiterate it and address a couple other comments I saw. Some biracial people are white and some biracial people are Black. Actually, some biracial people are neither Black or white, but race is what you look like, and biracial is not its own racial category. Biracial simply means that your parents are two different races. Two races came together and made you. And the implication that some biracial people are accepted as Black because of their level of success is like both anti-Black and colorist, but that's another post for another day. But I will give you some examples of biracial people. This is a white biracial person. This is also a white biracial person. This is a Black biracial person and her sellout sister. Now, this may be confusing. These two are biracial. She's not. All of them are racially Black, though. And I know it looks like their names should be Jaden and Caden, but these are not biracial people.